we're presenting to you all today with the hope that you will leave this conference with a better understanding of ways you can get involved in community organizing, ways youth like yourself can disrupt being disadvantaged and disempowered, and how youth organizing can incorporate reproductive justice into its agenda. So today on our session schedule, first we have our introductions, where each of the panelists will be going around introducing themselves, which organization they represent, and their pronouns. From there on, we'll tell you guys about speaking up and making your voice heard, ways you can intersect youth issues in the reproductive justice movement, and tools and tactics for young people organizing for reproductive justice. So beginning with the introductions, I'll lead off. My name is Priyana Cabral. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm a fellow with a nonprofit organization, Leaders Igniting Transformation, located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Maya, you want to go next?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Maya. I'm also from LIT in Milwaukee. I'm our political manager, and I use she, her pronouns.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gabrielle. You can call me Gabby. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I've been with Leaders Uniting Transformation for about 2 years, and I am a full-time student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
Hey everyone, I'm Maria Castillo-Venegas. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the co-president of the Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin Generation Action Chapter at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside.
Cool. Thanks for introducing yourselves, everybody. So I'm gonna lead us into our next section. Since we're coming to this workshop and sharing a lot of our own experiences at LIT or at Planned Parenthood, we wanted to take some time to introduce LIT and how we organize.
Okay, so Leaders Uniting Transformation, otherwise known as LIT, is an independent nonprofit that's based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It also operates across 7 different counties in the state. LIT, it was founded in 2017 with the intention of building young Black and Brown political power, so that way we can make change within our society that we will see within our lifetimes. Change does not have to be slow, which is something that I've learned while working with LIT.
We're presenting to you all today because we wanted to bring our knowledge of tactics and methods in youth organizing into the reproductive justice movement. And we wanted for ourselves to be able to understand ways we as youth can be able to make an impact in the reproductive movement, and share that with you all as well.
I want to share how LIT is structured because it leads to a lot of the ways that we're able to lead as young people within the organization. So our youth engagement is structured across 5 different departments. High school, which is our founding department and organizes in 14 different public schools in Milwaukee. Our college department, which organizes, like Gabby said, across 7 different counties on 11 Wisconsin campuses. Our cultural organizing department, which engages creatives, artists, and influencers. And then our civic and political engagement department, which focuses on electoral work, legislative strategy, and political education. Then we also have our digital or communications department, and they organize digitally as well as support us, as an organization internally. So the idea behind our structure in these departments that we have is to create a pipeline that is catching young Black and Brown people wherever they're at, and to engage them and make our political landscape a place where young folks are both involved and powerful. So I wanted to share a few ways that we make space for youth leadership within our structure. The chapter model that we use is very important because we have chapters at our different schools, which means that members are in community and building relationships with other people in their schools. And we found that they are able to support each other as well as recruit other folks on campus. And we also see that it's a lot more accessible because we're going to the chapters and the schools more often than we're asking folks to come to us or our office. The pipeline, as I mentioned before, we hope that students will continue to lead in lit. And we have seen success in lit students who were high school members like Gabby and then became college members as they moved from high school to college. So being able to catch students and engage them anywhere that they are has been key to making sure that they can lead up in the organizing we do. The other important thing is that although we set goals organizationally, which are also informed by our members, within chapters or our C-Space program, we solicit the direction, ideas, and feedback from students. There's also a lot of leadership opportunities, and we're very intentional about making sure that they're there for folks to occupy those spaces by establishing roles and giving responsibilities. It one retains members and also develops them so that they are able to lead independently in their chapter and their community. Lastly, I want to emphasize a core value of ours, which is compensating our young folk when they're doing work with us. When we solicit work, like in art submission, for example, we don't want to use or take advantage of young Black and Brown labor. We want to put money into the hands of young Black and Brown folks. So from canvassing with us to fellowships to um, any work that they do, it's important that if we're asking students to do work for us outside of just being involved in the chapter and the org, we make sure that we're compensating them for that. So those are a few points of our structure. All of our information will be at the end as well if folks want to continue to engage with Lit, but we'll move right into the presentation.
Okay, so from here, we'll begin to transition into the next section, which is ways to speak up and make your voice heard. This section is titled Empowering Youth Voices in Reproductive Justice. It will begin with the icebreaker activity led by Maria, following with my own personal cool tactics and tips for getting your voice heard, and then ending with ways to disrupt ageism. So, Maria, do you want to take over?
Yeah, so we're going to start our icebreaker now, and it is interactive. So Priyana is going to send in the group chat or in the Zoom chat the link to access this poll, or you can text the Maria Castillo with 2 L's 598. Text that to 22333, and you can get started with us. Sorry about that clock in the background. But so this is the icebreaker. It has 4 questions. And our first question is, what's your favorite TikTok account? So you can just type in your answer, hit send if you're just text messaging, and your answer should pop up here, or you could just type directly into it if you're on a browser or on your phone. So I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Okay, so you have to copy paste it into your browser, or I also just sent everyone the text code. So you can text that name to 22333 and it should be the same thing. Thanks for letting us know, Jason. All right, everyone. So some of the responses are, I don't use TikTok. Am I that old? Honestly, I'm 22 and I barely use it. So, so maybe you're not that old. Thanks for the person saying I'm doing great. And I'll have to check out your sister's TikTok, whoever you are. So we'll go to the next question. What's your most listened to album? I'll give it like 30 more seconds before we refresh and take a look at the answers. Probably a Rihanna album, definitely. Kid Conan Gray, he's pretty good. I'll have to listen to some of these. And our next question is, what's a series movie you recommend? I'll give it like 20 more seconds before we refresh. Game of Thrones, the Great British Baking Show, Vampires versus Bronx, Booksmart. I've never seen Snowpiercer. I'll take a look at that. And I think we have one more question before we go back to our presentation. And thanks for tolerating while we troubleshoot. That was the point of this icebreaker a little bit, to see if people could access the polls for later purposes. So our last question is, if you were an ice cream, which ice cream would you be and why? Note that this means that your favorite ice cream doesn't count. You don't get to be your favorite. Which one would you be if you had to be an ice cream? We'll give it 10 more seconds before we refresh. All right, some of these are really interesting answers. I hope some of you in the chat decide to tell me why you would be some of these. I'm really interested to hear why one of you believes you'll be caramels and praline. So Priyana answered that. Okay, that makes sense now. But for the rest of you, you're more than welcome to say in the chat why you feel like you'd be the ice cream you said you would be. But other than that, thanks for participating in this survey, in this icebreaker. So let's go back to the presentation. I will mention that we will be doing more polls in the rest of the presentation, so keep your device out and be sure to follow along.
Okay, next up, Priyana's going to talk to us about empowering youth voices and her own experiences.
All right. So how do we get our voices across at Lit? I'm going to tell you ways I've gotten my voice across at Lit, Lit has uplifted my voice specifically. So first, here at Lit, we empower the voices of our youth by providing them with platforms to voice their demands. This is both in person prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and digitally afterwards. So before the pandemic broke out, I was testifying weekly at board meetings and I was speaking on news segments. And to my surprise, I got my voice out even more during quarantine with digital platforms. Like you can see on the bottom, the first is an interview after we won the divestment from all forms of criminalization in schools, as well as police-free schools back in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So that's a virtual news interview that I did. The second is a virtual national webinar that I spoke on advocating for safe and equitable reopening of schools prior to the COVID-19 epidemic. Next was a DNC Here and Now special. So those are all really cool to be a part of, and I'm so happy to have gotten those opportunities. So next, we advocate relentlessly for you to be provided with the necessary resources amidst the COVID-19 epidemic. So this is another thing that Lit has transitioned really well with during the pandemic. So before, we advocated for our youth by demanding an increased amount of licensed professionals in schools. This is guidance counselors, nurses, just licensed professionals in general, as well as mandatory trainings like restorative justice practices put into schools, implicit bias trainings for students, just really advocating for our youth. So now we've shifted to also advocating for licensed professionals in a digital school environment, as well as equitable technology spread out across the district. So that's really cool. So yeah, we get our voices across by consistently and vocally demanding our needs. So, like I said, back in June, we were able to win police-free schools in Milwaukee, as well as the divestment from all criminalizing technology. This is metal detectors, facial recognition technology, anything that criminalizes a student in any way. And this is done from 2 years of LIT members relentlessly and persistently showing up to school board meetings and telling officials what they wanted and what they needed as students in this environment. So that's all thanks to that. So yeah. And then Maya touched on this a little bit earlier, but we make sure to give young creatives paid opportunities and platforms for their artwork. So whether that's by hosting a relationship voter competition or an art competition leading up to the election, Lit always finds ways to make what's happening in the world fun and creative and compensating youth for their work. And not only do they compensate us with money for what we produce, but they also compensate us with recognition and platforms. So the fourth and final picture down there with my face on it was actually part of Lit's student shoutouts that they do every week, where they highlight a student member or just a youth member in general for their accomplishments and all the work they have done on all social media platforms. So it's just really amazing. Here's just a few of my tips on ways to get your voice across.
Cool. Thank you, Priyana. So in this next section, we're going to go over how young people might be faced with ageism in their interactions and how we can overcome it. So this section is appropriately titled Mic Check, because we want to take the mic back. Because a lot of times as young people, assumptions get made about us, decisions get made for us and without us as well. So because we're young, a lot of people hold this misconception that we don't, we don't have anything to say about our rights, or that we don't even have the right to say anything because we're young or inexperienced. And we know that that's wrong. So in order to combat that, we need to have methods that we can use to disrupt this ageism and to take the mic back for ourselves and ensure that our voice is both listened to and acted upon. So a few ways that you can disrupt ageism include showing up. So just being present in spaces that maybe you didn't know you could even go to, but there's a lot of spaces that we have rights to be, especially if you're doing any advocacy in your government, because that's a lot of public spaces. So make sure that you're showing up, having a presence, and exercising your voice in the opportunities that are given for you to do so and have a right to do so. Another way is to create space. So, outside of those other spaces, make sure that you're creating your own space and having a place where you and other young folks can speak with each other, listen to each other, and organize together around important issues, because there's power in numbers, and having a good community of your own is very empowering. The other way is a mic check. So that's kind of the spirit of this section, of interrupting ageism together, because when there's lots of you, it's hard to drown your voices out or silence you. So a mic check is a tactic that's used to overcome, being spoken over. So if you're in a space and maybe the speaker has a microphone, or there's so many people that, you can't be heard, one person will say mic check, and then your whole group together will also say mic check, repeating them. And you'll do that until you're louder and louder, until the rest of the crowd or the person speaking is quiet, and you're able to take over that space and make your voice heard. Then after that, the speaker says their piece little by little, and the group repeats it so that it can be heard. And so this is just a way, kind of like a human microphone, that you can work together to overcome the barriers that you might be seeing and when you don't have a platform. Another important thing is to fill in positions of power. So maybe you can get a platform and fill any leadership positions that, sometimes they can be creative for young folks and sometimes they're not, and you need to make your space in it. but make sure that you're filling and taking advantage of any positions of power that you can, because we deserve that power as well. And then also challenge terminology. So make sure that spaces are safe to you and that they're respectful to you. So a lot of times tend to be addressed as children or kids, which those terms really reduce us and seek to reduce our voice and power and validity. So encourage the use of words like young adults or young people instead, in order to respect, the validity and the importance of our voice. So I want folks to take advantage of the chat now, and I want to make this a Skillshare opportunity. So, from our experiences, we were able to get those tips, but I want to hear from y'all in terms of what ways you've, encountered in ageism and how you interrupted it, sharing any approaches that you might have to be successful in making your voice heard. And then I hope that, all together we can read those responses and learn from each other and develop the skills that we need to interrupt the ageism that we're unfortunately experiencing. Cool. So now we're going to move into a new section that's focusing on the way that youth issues and the reproductive justice movement intersect, and how the reproductive justice movement is important to us as young people, and having a space is key for us.
So in this next session or section, we're going to be talking about how we are affected by reproductive justice issues, how to recognize strategies that are used against us as young people, and then people can also continue, and then also hear other people's ways of combating the ageism in reproductive justice. So yes. So how and why are we disempowered because of our age? The main reason why we're disempowered is because we carry the most amount of change in our bones. It goes from generation to generation, increasing change. We are a threat to societal norms, the heteronormative society for those who are stuck in the past. So the way we're disempowered is not at all discrete. Of course, first it starts with being discredited. We couldn't possibly understand the intricacies of policy, especially policy that concerns our own bodies. We've not been on this earth as long. We're not as experienced. We couldn't be as knowledgeable. But we are, and we have to be, because we have the greatest stakes, those positions of power. And then we have much more time on this earth. So it's so easy to specifically target us because of our age. Trigger words like naive, baby, anything like that comes up frequently to target and discredit us. It's especially to keep young people out of those positions of power. So the political world on a state or a federal level is just not built for us. It's meant to be laws, which means that you have to meet a certain age requirement. So like on a federal level, it's 35 for president, 30 for senator, 25 for House of Representatives. And there are age of candidacy laws for each state, meaning that you have to be a certain age to run for a certain position of power. So it's literally sometimes impossible to hold office and make the change that you want to see. Even if you were to win, there have been instances where people have protested. So on top of being discredited and not allowed into those positions of power, we don't have bodily autonomy until we're 18 years old, sometimes even older if you're on parents' insurance and they feel the need to take control over you and your body still. So I know for me that birth control was a struggle and a fight with my grandma. she thought it was immoral, that it's not something that we should be doing to our body. Promoted sex. So no matter the reason, if you were getting birth control to prevent a pregnancy, or if you're having birth control to regulate periods, birth control should be a choice for yourself, made by yourself, and it should be easily accessible for all. So eventually I was tired of arguing and decided to go against her and went to Planned Parenthood on my own. Which I was really appreciative for, control of my own body and my own bodily autonomy. So if you needed abortion access or anything else like that under the age of 18, you also need a parent to sign off. Or if you wanted to bypass that, you do have to go in front of a judge and explain to that judge why the abortion is necessary. So once again, that puts your power or your choice into somebody else's hands. So family planning for young mothers is relatively non-existent. It can be, and all of this can be traced back to reproductive justice. So if you have a story or anything that resonated with you, we encourage you to put it down below in the chat. I would like now to introduce my peer Maria, who has another activity for us.
All right, everyone. So we are going back to do another poll. So Priyana just sent the link in the chat. Again, you can just copy paste that, or you can type it into your browser. It's pollev.com/Maria Castil with 2 L's 598. It's in the chat, so you can just copy paste that into your phone. So now we're gonna share the poll. So the first question is, you can text this one like before with my name and then 598 to 22333. This one you can text in A, B, or C for the questions. But the first question is, do you feel as if you have the resources for safe family planning? So it seems we're pretty split right now, and yes, no, and you're not sure yet. And it's okay to not know yet. We just hope that when you do know, it's a yes. But for now, personally, I'm not okay with the fact that it's split. Everyone should have a yes on this question, and I'm sorry you don't. So next question. Do you feel as if you have full body autonomy? Freedom, or where autonomy means you have the freedom over choices for your own body. Okay, so none of us feel, oh, one person feels like they do have full body autonomy, where the majority say either no or for some areas, but not all areas. So going to the next question. How do young people hold space in the reproductive justice world? In other words, what role do young people play? So it could be medically, what role do they play medically in terms of reproductive justice? Or it could be about organizing around reproductive justice. You could just type in as many answers as you want. So reading off some of these answers, we are the basis for the movement, organizing and advocacy, advocating for menstrual products in schools, and young people should be in leadership roles. So it's good to know that all of us recognize that there are roles that young people play in this world. Next question. please. So how familiar are you with your state's reproductive rights laws? Are you A, very familiar, B, somewhat familiar, or C, not familiar? Again, you can text it too if it's not working for your browser, and texting either A, B, or C as your response. And then going to the responses at the bottom, we can take a look at our answers. So no one said they're very familiar with their state's reproductive rights laws, and that is a problem. That should be something that's accessible to all of us. And according to this audience, it isn't, and that's not okay. The majority said they were either somewhat familiar or not familiar. Do you feel comfortable asking reproductive related questions to a person or people in your life, whether it's a counselor, a teacher, and any adult, a parent, a healthcare professional? Okay, so a couple of you said sometimes or no. Just know that there are people around you that are comfortable with being asked these questions. It's just a matter of finding those people. And then next question. What are some needs that young people, teens or 20s, haven't fully been given access to in reproductive justice? Or in other words, what do you think needs to be done to obtain your own autonomy? Free menstrual products, that's a good one. Access to reproductive info and healthcare in all states. Contraceptives for all. Access to honest and practical sex education. Yeah, these are some good answers. And these are all things we feel like we're lacking right now, and don't have full access to. And for our next question, do you talk to folks around you about the importance of reproductive justice as of now? So it's one thing for us to ask those around us about reproductive related questions, but it's another thing to talk to them about the importance of it. All right, so it seems like the majority say yes, which is a good sign. It's a good thing that you're out there talking about these issues and sticking up for yourself when the conversation arises, for those of us that said when the conversations come up. So those are two very important qualities in reproductive justice, is speaking about it otherwise, and speaking about why it's important to us. Otherwise, there won't be any change for it. And our last question. In what ways are young people denied access or disempowered because of their age? So Gabby spoke on this one a little bit, talking about how people will call you naive or childish and then just cast away what you have to say. So can you think of any ways that young people in your life perhaps are denied access or disempowered because of their age? I like the answer that's up right now because it's kind of vague. It's like too young to know. Well, know what? Well, they kind of use this argument in all terms of our life. Too young to know this, too young to know that. So thanks for whoever said that one. Not allowed into positions of power, exactly, and that could be because of experience. They say we lack experience. We haven't been around long enough, like Abby said. So keep this question in the back of your mind whenever you're organizing or advocating for something. Is this not going the way I wanted it to because of my age? And not because of your own age doing it, but because of how they're perceiving your age and what that has to do with what you're advocating for. Yeah, and underrepresented, a lot of the times they just won't listen if you're younger. And age restrictions on certain resources. Yes, exactly. Like Gabby's mentioned, needing to present before a judge if you're under 18 and want an abortion. And it's kind of restricting then on our autonomy. And then we'll go back to our presentation and Maya will take it from here. Thanks for participating, by the way.
All right. Thank you, Maria. Thank y'all for participating in that poll and letting us know your feedback and experiences as well. So as we move into a further explanation of the impact of reproductive rights on young people, we're going to talk about some ways, including laws and access needs and complications in birthing and abortion care. So I just want folks to know none of it's descriptive, but just to know that we're going to talk about those. And then also a lot of the stats use like language that's gendered to women or girls. And that's the language that was used in it. So just so that folks know, it's just kept so that we can maintain the statistic that that publication made and how they described it. So we have a stake in the reproductive justice movement just as much as everybody else. We're a quarter of the population, young people. So, we're a quarter of the need probably, or maybe even more. And so it's important that we have, an understanding of the ways that it's impacting to us. And it's also important that we're communicating that to the folks who are making decisions and trying to be involved in those too. So let's talk a little bit about the ways that we feel it too as young people. So 1 in 4 young girls identify a need for unmet contraception. So that means that they're sexually active or thinking about it and don't have access to methods to help with pregnancy prevention. Another important thing is sex ed. I think someone said that in the polls that we have terrible sex ed that we provide to people. A lot of times there's an underserving happening. Only 38% of high schools and 14% of middle schools are providing sex ed that covers all 19 topics identified by the CDC as critical sex ed topics. So we're really being underserved and not being given the full spectrum of information on sex, sexual health, sexuality, or relationships. And it's got a big impact on our health in the future. Another big one is parental consent laws, just like we've touched on already, but they require, the presence or the signature of a parent or guardian. And those are really important to know about because they put the decision in the hands of the parents, not the actual person, the young person receiving care. And so it's pretty unfortunate, and a lot of times it's discouraging to folks from accessing that care. A lot of people are able to make the decision by themselves and are able to involve their parents or guardians. But for folks who don't, they shouldn't be forced to decide between, maybe their safety, maybe their home, the roof over their head, to get the care that they need, right? And so a lot of times the folks who are able to involve their parents do, and the folks who don't, have a lot of reasoning as to why not. So it's really important that we know that. And another thing is inaccessibility and the way that it affects young people. because young folks are a lot less likely to have funds. And one part of that is because folks, are relying on parents' insurance. And when things aren't covered, are able to be provided, services aren't able to be provided at a rate that folks can afford, it affects, our access to it because maybe we don't have those funds, aren't working yet, or don't feel safe using our parents' insurance to cover that. Another important piece on access is transportation, because a lot of times, because of defunding happening, care is sparse, and because of laws, it might take 3, visits or more. So transportation is important for folks, who maybe are not old enough to drive yet or don't have access to reliable transportation to care for their health. Another important thing to note is that complications affect young folks too. We've seen that globally. A leading cause for death of young people ages 15 to 19 is complications from pregnancy and childbirth, including abortions. So it's unsafe abortions. So it's important to recognize, that the lack of rights and access to those rights is a life or death, is a life or death situation at times, and it's very serious for all folks, and young people is included in that. So, these are just a glimpse of the policies and attacks on reproductive rights and how they're impacting young people. And it's a little bit grim, but it's important to know. And the good news is that there's lots of groups that are organizing. Young people are organizing to make a change, and so we're going to highlight a few of those groups. So one of them is Advocates for Youth, which is a sponsor, I think, of this conference. So that's super cool. They have 2 programs. One is the Youth Abortion Support Collective, which is, just as the name describes, and then also the Young Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective. So curating those spaces that are intentionally inclusive and led by young people is important. Another organization is URGE, which stands for Unite for Reproductive and Gender Equity. And they have campus chapters around the country, as well as internships and opportunities like that, as well as resources that you can access to learn more and get more involved. There's also Sister Song, which is a Black and Brown reproductive justice org that's getting more youth involved in their work. They had a great conference last year. Another organization is PPGen Action, which Maria is a co-president of a chapter and leading in her community through that. And they have chapters all across the country and create a network of young people who are advocating through their campus chapters. Lastly, there's the Condom Collective, which is a super cool project that I believe is between the Advocates for Youth and Trojan Condoms, where you can access, free condoms to hand out on your campus. So now Gabby's going to share a little bit about how our local Planned Parenthood is a resource in our community.
Hello, I just want to firstly apologize. My video will have to stay off because of my internet connection. But to start off, one of the greatest claiming back our bodily autonomy is Planned Parenthood Wisconsin. So Planned Parenthood has been fighting for reproductive justice in Wisconsin for as long as I can remember. They've helped to achieve inclusive education, including topics like what bodily autonomy is, being aware of both sexual and emotional abuses, and HIV and STI awareness. The greatest problem, though, is, in my experience with MPS, which is Milwaukee Public Schools, it still seems optional to some teachers who still only teach an abstinence-only narrative. So maybe once or twice someone comes in with a projector and puts it up on a wall in an auditorium and makes it an uncomfortable space for people to ask questions. So it's not entirely all too helpful, but they do actually talk about health issues like STIs. And this was mainly happening when Milwaukee was going through a high-level STI outbreak back in 2018, which includes were skyrocketing. And then it started to also involve high school students. And all of that is because their inclusive education is not uniform in Wisconsin. So there's also this stigma around STIs and HIV, and making sure that you go to get tested to prevent those. But Planned Parenthood was extremely active during this crisis. So they were active about education, providing extra safe sex measures like condoms and dedication. They also help provide greater bodily autonomy for both Black women and other POC. So they can provide birth control like the shot, which is a contraceptive that I use, and they do it for little to no money. Planned Parenthood also does cancer screenings, pap smears or tests, abortion services, or if you're looking to put a baby up for adoption, they help with adoption referrals, and they help with family planning by offering pregnancy tests, a safe and healthy pregnancy, which is especially important for Black women in the United States right now because they are more likely to die than their white counterpart due to pregnancy-related causes. So I am especially grateful for Planned Parenthood because more recently I've started having severe stomach problems, particularly near my uterus. And I went to my white male general practitioner, and he basically said, like, it could be anything. And from the last thing he said, it could be cysts on my uterus. And he completely brushed over it like it was something not serious and not something to follow up with. And then his treatment was to put me on a diet, which was already a problematic response because I am a plus size woman. And that is a problem with healthcare for women who want to receive proper care. Otherwise, they don't receive proper healthcare because they are plus size. So now because of Planned Parenthood, I have an appointment for screenings to make sure that I'm generally healthy, and that man is no longer my doctor. But moral of the story is Planned Parenthood is there to support me, and it's there to support other women who have stories like mine, who are disbelieved, not taken seriously, especially when they're younger, because doctors like to think that they know more than us when we're the ones attuned with our own bodies. So they're there to help other people like me and help assist them. But so I do ourselves.
Okay, so to move forward, we are going to move into our last section of the presentation. Super thankful to Gabby and Maria for that important discussion. This section that we're moving into, we're hoping that this is going to give you some really great tools as young folks to be organizing in the reproductive justice movement. So we're going to try to apply a lot of what we've talked about today to our organizing.
All right, so let's try to get ahead of the game. So you're thinking about organizing for your community, for your school, for any area around yourself, and you're trying to get ready for it. So what are you thinking, feeling? So we're gonna go ahead and do another poll, except this time it's gonna be a word cloud. So if you're on your phone or your browser, you just have to type in as many words as you want about how you're going to think or feel about this, about organizing. So we're going to pull the word cloud up so you could follow along with us and see people's submissions. And Priyana just sent the link once again into the chat. If there's a word on the screen that you also feel, you're welcome to submit that word again. All right, so by the looks of it, the majority are nervous and excited. Other words up there are timid, efficient, community productive, patience, relationships, overwhelmed, and strength. So it seems like a lot of us are feeling a slew of emotions. I myself do get nervous and excited when I think about having to organize. And I feel like I just want to point out that all of these can exist at once. All of these bad feelings and these good feelings, they can exist at once. You can be super excited to gather with your community and plan to make change while also being nervous about what you'll have to go through to get there. So thanks for participating. Oh, so we're getting some more answers still. Good. So just know that if you are the person that's feeling these bad, quote unquote, bad feelings, I mean, they're feelings, just know that obviously you aren't the only one that submit that as your answer, and other people do feel the same way. So now we're going to go back to our presentation. So how do we stay ready between organizing so we don't have to get ready each time? In other words, how do we prepare in advance so that way you don't have to do as much legwork the next time around? So my first strategy for this is to document everything that's going on about the situation. Keep your receipts, whether you're wanting to organize about a professor or teacher treating you a certain way, make sure to keep those emails of interactions with them if that's your evidence against the complication. Make sure to keep any communications that you have with them, whether they're text, phone calls, and that kind of stuff. So you're keeping track of what's going on, the communications you've had. Also build your community. So talk to those around you, ask around, hey, have you had a problem with this? Yeah, I have too. And then there's your community a little bit and start to grow from there. Whether it's about reproductive justice and you're talking to your friends like, hey, this person didn't let me go use the restroom even though I'm menstruating. Have you had this problem? And if they have, then you have another person who went through the same experience. And experiences in organizing are so important because you may not be the only one with that experience. And the more testimonies you get towards this one situation, the better it is for your organizing. The third strategy is to anticipate the tactics that are used against you. So say you're approaching city council with a proposition and a resolution. You want to think about, what are they going to say back when I say this? What are they going to think when I say this? And what are they going to do to prevent me from getting my way, pretty much. And like we said before about ageism, anticipate that they're going to use your age against you. Anticipate that they're going to belittle you. And from there, you want to anticipate how you're going to feel when they say that. When they tell you that you're too young to know about this, you're too inexperienced, and you don't know the real world, how are you going to react? Because in person, you don't want to just start sobbing in front of them while you're organizing. While that is a completely valid emotion to feel when you're being belittled, remember that that's going to further their ammunition and their tactic on completely invalidating what you're organizing about. So you have to know how you're going to feel beforehand so you can navigate your feelings and be more logical about your approach. You also want to make sure you investigate before you act. Do research. Do as much research as you can on the topic. On the topic of getting police out of schools, like you probably aren't the first person to try to do that. So do as much research as you can about groups that were successful in doing it, whether it's advocating for free menstrual products that other people, that someone had mentioned in the poll earlier. There are groups that do that. There are groups that have done that. So make sure you do your research on what you'll need to do to get that to pass for yourself. And remember to be consistent. Stay on top of your appointments, stay on top of meetings. Make sure that you're taking notes if you are organizing with your community members, and keep those notes. And then remember to reach out, because you as a young person, people have been fighting and organizing for years, for centuries. So know that you aren't the first person to have to organize for something. Whether you're organizing for something different, the same strategies apply. Talk to those that are older than you. And if they say for those that say you're inexperienced, well, you can become experienced by talking to those that have organized and have taken these steps before you already. And by following all of these tactics, you won't have to get ready. You won't have to do all of these parts the next time you want to organize too, because you'll already be ready for it.
Awesome. All right, so moving into the last section of our presentation, let's talk about strategy. And the unfortunate
Hi, Maya, your audio cut out.
Oh, okay, is it back? All right, my bad, everybody. Um, so the unfortunate truth is that as young people, we're going to be doubted and we're going to have to work twice as hard or maybe more just to get into the same spaces, to get heard, and to move our priorities forward. So a part of staying ready, like Maria said, is to enter into any effort with intention and with strategy. And as young organizers, our strategy relies, our success relies on our strategy and our understanding of the issues we face. So here I have a few strategy tips that we hope will help y'all to organize. And this list plus more is going to be in a document that we'll share with you later, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So some of these tips include, like Maria said, being consistent with your demands, don't give up. So if you start with a demand, carry that through. Don't make it smaller just to fit, the what they're pushing back with you for. Keep your demands, keep them there and hold them strong. Expand your base. There's power in numbers. Build your network. Engage allies that are going to be strategic and helpful to your efforts. Learn and practice escalation, which is going to be efficient and effective. You don't want to come in super hot, guns blazing to try to solve something that maybe you could just send somebody an email, right? You don't have to do all of that. So escalation goes one step at a time. And if your needs aren't met, then you step it up, then you do more, then you put more pressure. Like mass mobilization, it's a really great tactic of all showing up, but you don't have to go through the effort of organizing that until you've built up that pressure. Another important thing is using political education, and we'll touch on that a little bit more in just a second. And then the last thing I'll say is to evaluate your tactics. Make sure that they're contributing to your goal, that they're building your people, growing your group or your campaign membership. And then make sure that they're building the leadership skills and capacity of the folks who are involved with you. All of that is super important.
So another key to organizing is political to organizing, because how can you really organize around something you don't know about or you're not educated about? And we always have to be in this constant state of organizing and learning to be able to be at our best. So we have to understand our government and how to systematically build against us. We need to understand how important voting is to making change within that government. And then we also need to recognize the history that births movements like this. History is fighting those misconceptions that are brought up that people have. So like the most common misconception is what it means to be pro-choice. So if we are staying educated means more forward momentum for our movement. Maya has just a couple of things to close us out, and then
yeah,
our handles.
Thanks, Gabby. First I want to say thank you so much for joining us. We're going to wrap up with a gift to y'all. To conclude us, I want to offer a few opportunities to stay connected outside of this moment, because we hope you've enjoyed it and been taking some information away that you're going to be using in your own organizing. So first, as you can see on the slide, link with us on social media. We be lit on there. And we want to stay connected. So shoot us a message, read our posts, let us know your thoughts. The other thing is, Brianna drops a link in the chat of a form. So that form begins with a very brief evaluation, which we'd appreciate if you would fill it out, just so that we can know, some feedback on the content and our presenting. And then we also have on that same form, there's a space for you to opt into receiving a toolkit that we've created just for y'all, that is for youth organizers in the reproductive justice movement. In there, you're going to find these slides, as well as the strategy tips listed, plus a few more, a resource list, or like a resource of lessons that we learned in our lobbying, as well as a general resource list with different orgs and readings and things like that. There's also a section on that form, the same one, that you can opt into our network that we're going to build from this. Like I said, so we can stay connected beyond this moment. So on there, you can opt in to share your organization's information, so that we can build this network of youth organizers and groups that are led by youth to do reproductive justice work. So if you wanted to, you could opt into that, so that we can all stay connected. And I'll just close this out with our gratitude. We're really grateful again for y'all's presence in this space, and we hope to keep working together and, like I said, staying connected, so that we can achieve this liberation in our own lifetime. So thanks for being here. Follow us, hit us up after if you have any other questions.
Yeah, so it seems like there are people saying that the form can only be viewed by users in the owner's organization. So we're going to take a few minutes to try to fix that so everyone's able to view it. So stay on that though, because we want you to refresh it in a few minutes and actually be able to to fill out the form for us. So thank you for letting us know.
All right, should be together. Sorry about that little mistake, y'all, but should be able to give us your feedback on that. Again, thanks y'all. I see y'all jumping right on there. That's good to hear. So we'll stay connected, and thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for coming in, tuning in.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.